Hello everyone. Tonight, I'm sharing a story about money, manners, and betrayal in diamonds. It starts with a billionaire wife accusing the nanny of theft under a chandelier. Mara Vale stood very still as Celeste Ashford held out a jewelry box and asked what she was doing in Victor's office. The room was silent except for the ballroom noise outside, where crystal glasses clinked and strangers laughed as if nothing inside the suite could matter. But it did matter. Mara could feel it in the way Celeste blocked the door with one polished shoulder and a perfect smile that never reached her eyes. She was not asking a question. She was staging a punishment. Mara understood the game instantly. If she protested too fast, she looked guilty. If she stayed quiet, she looked weak. Celeste had chosen the room, the witnesses, and the timing. She had waited until the gala was full, until the mansion was packed with donors and board members, until there were enough people nearby to turn a private lie into public shame. Mara knew the accusation was wrong. She had found something far worse yesterday, something hidden in the nursery trash and shoved under a stack of wipes like a secret too dangerous to throw away properly. Inside her purse was a DNA report that could destroy the whole family. And when Celeste said Victor's office, Mara realized this was not about a missing brooch at all. It was about silencing her before she could say a word. 6 months earlier, Mara took the job because the salary could pay her mother's surgery bills and keep her own life from slipping apart. The Ashfords liked to say they hired the best. What they really meant was they hired the quietest. In that house, everything was polished and controlled. The floors gleamed. The flowers were always fresh. The staff moved like shadows in expensive uniforms, careful never to make a sound that might annoy Celeste or interrupt Victor's sense of order. Mara learned the rules fast. Smile less. Hear more. Ask nothing. Henry, the little boy she cared for, kept asking if Daddy would come home. He asked it while stacking puzzle pieces and while pretending not to yawn at the table. He asked it in the soft, careful voice of a child who had learned that adults answer fastest when they are already guilty. Mara had noticed the resemblance everyone else seemed determined to ignore. The dark lashes. The sharp mouth. The way Henry looked at Victor from across the room as if searching for a face he was supposed to trust. Mara had even felt sorry for the boy, because rich children can be lonely in houses that look perfect from the outside. Then, while emptying the nursery bin, she found a crumpled lab envelope beneath dry wipes and an expensive ribbon. It had been tucked there too neatly to be trash. She opened it in the laundry room with wet hands and a steady pulse that did not match the noise in her chest. The report was blunt. Probability of paternity, 0. The child was Henry Ashford. The tested father was Victor Ashford. Mara stared until the words stopped looking like English. Then she took photos, because instinct told her this was not just a mistake. It was a weapon. And when she heard Celeste's heels in the hall, she slipped the original back into the envelope and kept working as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The nursery still smelled the same. The house still looked perfect. Mara was the only one who knew it was built on a lie. By dinner, Mara could feel the shift. The head housekeeper stopped meeting her eyes. The chauffeur chose the other hall. Even the kitchen staff, who usually greeted her with a tired nod or a murmured joke, suddenly acted as if she carried bad luck on her shoes. That was the first real warning. Rich families never had to say you were in trouble. They let the room do it for them. Celeste did not confront her directly again that night. She was too elegant for that. Instead, the assistant manager arrived with a cream envelope and a smile so thin it looked painful. Inside was a confidentiality agreement with Mara's name already typed at the top, plus language about unauthorized access to private family records. It was ridiculous on its face and terrifying underneath. It meant Celeste had already decided Mara was a problem. It meant somebody was building a paper trail before the story even broke. Mara asked why now. The assistant manager said family is under stress, just procedure, in the voice of someone repeating a line they had been told to memorize. Mara almost laughed. Victor was in New York pretending to close a deal, Celeste was downstairs flattering donors. This house was quietly circling the drain while everyone kept smiling. Later, in the pantry, Mara found Tom the chauffeur standing by the humming wine refrigerator. He did not look at her directly at first. He just said, in a low voice, that if she had seen anything, she should not let Celeste catch her alone. He added that the last nanny had disappeared fast. Not died. Not vanished in a headline. Just gone in the way poor people go when a rich family decides they have become inconvenient. References disappear. Background checks get ugly. Rent goes unpaid. Doors close. Tom did not say more, because he did not need to. Mara understood. She tucked the copy of the DNA report deeper into her pocket and kept her face blank. If they wanted a quiet girl, they had made a mistake. Quiet girls notice everything. The next evening, the Ashfords hosted their annual Children's Hospital Gala, and the entire city seemed to fit inside the ballroom. Trustees, senators, socialites, donors, all the people who smiled for photographs and then measured one another by the size of their checks. Mara was told to stay near the coat room and keep Henry with the other children. That should have warned her. In houses like this, being sent out of sight usually meant you were being set up. 10 minutes later, Celeste appeared in a silver dress that caught every light in the room. She moved with the confidence of someone who had already decided how the story would end. She announced that her diamond brooch was missing. Then she said security had found it in Mara's tote. The room turned in one smooth motion. Cameras lifted. Conversations thinned. People leaned in, hungry for a scandal that did not belong to them. A security guard asked to search Mara's bag. Mara opened it herself, because she refused to let them touch her like a criminal if she could help it. Inside were ordinary things, a hairbrush, chapstick, a folded receipt. Then Celeste's planted velvet pouch. Then, buried under everything else, the folded DNA report. That was the real reason for the search. Celeste saw the paper and her face changed, just for a second, the way a mask slips when the person wearing it forgets they are being watched. "You're fired," Celeste said, loud enough for the room to hear. "And if you speak about this family, you'll regret it." That was the humiliation peak. Not the theft lie. Not the public dismissal. It was the way the whole ballroom looked at Mara as if she had dirt on her shoes and secrets in her hands. Henry watched from nearby with a frightened, confused stare. Mara's face burned, but her mind turned cold. The shame was real. So was the evidence. And now she understood that the family was not only lying. They were terrified. Mara should have left. That would have been the smart, safe choice. Instead, she went upstairs while the gala still hummed below and the house settled around her like a held breath. Victor's office door had not been locked. That alone told her something important. Either he was careless, or he assumed no one brave enough to enter would know what to look for. Inside, the room was perfect in the way rich men's offices always are. Leather chairs. Framed photographs. A decanter no one had touched. Heavy curtains. Soft light. A space designed to say power without ever raising its voice. Mara ignored the mood and started searching with purpose. Bottom drawer. File cabinet. The narrow space behind the audit folders. That was where she found it, another lab envelope, hidden where an assistant could tuck it away and forget it existed. This report was dated 2 weeks earlier. Celeste's initials sat on the corner like a fingerprint. Inside was another paternity test, ordered from a private clinic in Connecticut. The source samples were Henry Ashford and Victor Ashford. The conclusion was the same. 0%. Victor was not Henry's father. Mara felt her stomach tighten, but the worst part was still waiting underneath. Beneath the report was an email printout. One line said, "Destroy all copies. If this leaks, the trust changes hands." Another line, from Celeste to the family lawyer, said, "Make sure the nanny is the one blamed if anything surfaces." That was the reveal. Not just the lie about the child, but the fact that the family had already built the frame around Mara before the scandal ever broke. She read it once, then again, then a third time, because sometimes the mind refuses to believe what the eyes can clearly see. the brooch, the confidentiality agreement, the public search. It was all part of the same machine. Celeste had not reacted to Mara by instinct. She had prepared for her. In the corner of the file, Mara found one more piece of the puzzle, a trust amendment showing Henry's inheritance depended on proof of legitimate lineage. Suddenly everything made sense. This was not only about marriage. It was about money, control, and a child being used as leverage. Mara photographed every page and sent the files to herself. Then she sat in Victor's chair while the rain hit the windows and understood, with icy clarity, that the family had built a cage. Now she had the key. By the time Celeste stepped to the podium, she looked flawless again. That was her special skill. She could take a room that hated her and still make herself seem like the most reasonable person inside it. Mara watched from the service corridor with her phone in her hand and a pulse that had finally turned steady. Humiliation had burned through her, and what remained was colder. Clearer. Useful. Celeste smiled and began talking about family, trust, and grace, as if those words had not already been poisoned. That was when Mara sent the photos to the projection technician she had helped with an AV schedule weeks earlier. Not a dramatic speech. Not a threat. Just the files, time-stamped, plus one line, project these if you value the truth. A few seconds passed. Then the first page appeared on the giant screen behind Celeste. The ballroom changed instantly. The room did that strange collective inhale people make when they realize the scandal in front of them is real. The DNA report appeared. Then the email. Then the trust amendment. Donors froze with drinks halfway to their mouths. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" Celeste snapped for the screen to be shut off, but it was too late. Victor entered from the side and stopped dead when he saw the evidence. He looked from the screen to his wife, and Mara could tell he was not seeing this for the first time. Maybe he had never seen every detail. But he had known enough to stay quiet. Mara stepped into the light before anyone could stop her. This was the reversal. The accused nanny was no longer the weakest person in the room. Her voice stayed calm because rage had already done its work inside her. She told them they wanted a scapegoat, and here she was, but the lie belonged to them. Nobody applauded. Nobody defended Celeste. The ballroom held still, trapped between money and truth. And for the first time all night, Celeste did not control the room. The next 20 minutes moved fast. Lawyers arrived before the crowd fully understood what had happened. The board members gathered in tight, anxious circles. 2 donors left before dessert was served. Someone from the hospital foundation had already photographed the screen and texted the images to reporters. That was the payoff, if you could call it that. The truth escaped the room so quickly that no one with power could stuff it back inside. By the time Mara reached the front steps, the story was already leaving the building without her. Reporters shouted her name. Flashbulbs burst in the dark. People who had ignored her all night suddenly wanted a quote, a soundbite, a clean little sentence that would make the scandal easier to sell. Mara said nothing. Celeste was escorted out another door with her face blank and pale. Victor stayed behind the glass lobby, half in shadow, looking like a man who had just watched the structure of his life collapse. Then Henry appeared in the doorway, small and frightened, clutching the edge of his blazer. Mara's heart cracked open in a way she had not expected. He looked at her first, not at his mother. He asked if she was leaving. That question hurt more than the humiliation, because it reminded her that children do not understand the lies adults build around them. They only know who stays, who leaves, and who looks kind. Mara crouched in front of him, ignoring the cameras, and told him none of this was his fault. That was the payoff too, in its own quiet way. Not revenge for its own sake, but the moment the lie stopped being private and started costing the people who created it. A reporter shouted that the billionaire wife was caught in a paternity cover-up during a charity gala. Mara almost closed her eyes. Not because she was sad. Because she was exhausted. Justice was never elegant. It was noisy, messy, and too late for innocence. Still, she had won enough to make them lose control. Mara did not go back to the mansion. She checked into a small hotel across town, the kind with honest carpet, thin curtains, and no one waiting behind the door to tell her where to stand. The room felt almost shockingly plain after the marble halls and the chandelier light. She set her phone on the nightstand and finally let her hands shake. Not much. Just enough to remind her that she was human and not just the person who had survived the night. On the bed beside her lay the copied DNA report, creased now at the corners from everything it had been through. That paper had changed the direction of an entire family's future, but Mara did not feel clean triumph. She felt something more complicated. She felt the ache of having seen too much. Wealth had not merely lied to her. It had turned a child into decoration, a marriage into theater, and a nanny into a scapegoat. She unpacked her tote slowly. Chapstick. Keys. A receipt. Then, in the inner pocket, she found something she had forgotten was there, a second envelope, smaller, unmarked, with Henry's school emblem on the flap. Mara stared at it for a long moment. She had no idea who slipped it in. Celeste, Victor, the school, maybe the lawyer. Inside could be another lie, or the next piece of truth. She did not open it tonight. Some doors deserve daylight. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, Mara sat very still, listening to the hotel hum and the rain fading off the glass. She had become their nightmare. But nightmares rarely end cleanly. And that's how it ended, or how it paused, anyway. The truth had come out, but the damage would keep talking. If you want more stories where the rich smile first and bleed later, stay close. There's always another secret in the next envelope.